welcome to some more Into the Emerald Dream Priest, Rogue, and Shaman star ratings. We've seen the first half, let's see the second half of the cards. And actually, the first half I rated quite highly, which doesn't bode well for the second half, let's put it that way. Anyway, first we're going to deal with Priest, and actually we'll deal with the Imbue package separately, because I actually think this Imbue package you might not run with a lot of the other cards, or at least it's not a guaranteed. Maybe you plug it in there as a small package, but it's not going to make up what I think is the big Priest archetype of this set. The Imbue button for Priest, in case you're wondering, is you generate a temporary card with its cost reduced equal to the number of times you've imbued over the course of the game. It's the one few Imbue buttons where it truly could be 2 mana, do nothing. If you spend 2 mana and you've got like a 2 mana discount, and the card that is generated is like a 9 cost card, and you don't have the mana to play it on that turn, you've done 2 mana, do nothing. And basically because of that reason, I think this won't work. I think as a mechanic, it's just completely flawed. Also, Priest, not blessed with a great package right now. Now, it's not to say that Priest doesn't have a good deck. Priest has got good decks, and has had some good decks for the last year, but they are ultra niche specific deck lists that kind of only work with like those 30 cards plus or minus maybe like 2 or 3 cards in the list. And just generating random ones of those, like if you generate something from the Dragon package, that's not going to work with the rest of your like Imbue control deck, because it's probably going to be a control deck to try and get the value from the button. Nevertheless, it is value, and maybe games go long enough that you need this value to help get you over the edge. To that though I say, what is better, the Imbue Priest button or Kil'jaeden? And when I thought about it, I was like, you know what, I think I'd actually quite happily just drop this Imbue package and just put Kil'jaeden in my Control Priest deck instead, to go for infinite value that way. So for those reasons, 2 stars to both the Imbue cards from Priest. I actually don't think there'll be a tier 3 deck even with the Imbue package. Then I think the real meat and potatoes of Priest is actually this big Spell Priest package, we'll just call it that for now. Or at least it's going to be some sort of Spell Priest package with Aviana Lune's Chosen, Tyrande, Moonwell, Weaver of the Cycle, Ritual of the New Moon, Wish of the New Moon, and probably Twilight Influence like slotted into that list. I think the game plan for Priest, and what could be the defining package for Priest for the next year, is staying alive long enough that you can cast Aviana to turn your deck into 1-cost cards, and then you use Tyrande to like machine gun down your opponent. Currently though, Control Priest is not in a great spot. I don't think this new set has added enough good control cards to make Priest workable again. The issue with Control Priest wasn't ever like the big removal cards like Moonwell. That was fine. They had stuff like that with repackaged as well, was fine. What their issue was dealing with the early game, and I don't think that issue has been solved. So I don't think Priest can reliably survive through to the point of getting Aviana off into Tyrande into 3 spells. Also, I think a small issue they're going to have is I think there's going to be decks out there that go beyond 30 max health, either via increasing their max health in the case of Death Knights, or via insane armor gains via some of the Starship decks. So I don't think you'll be able to OTK your opponent down with these spells, which might be why you want to then put the Imbue package in so you have some alternate pathway to get to a victory condition. Hell, you might generate Tyrande from the Imbue button, but because you don't have like Raza type mechanics where you could like renew the button and use it over and over again, it feels like those turns are not going to be quite punchy enough to like really scare an opponent. For those reasons, I think that the big Spell Priest package is only going to be a tier 3 deck. So I've given Aviana, Tyrande, Moonwell, Ritual of the New Moon, Wish of the New Moon, all 3 stars, because I think they'll all go into that deck. Weaver of the Cycle and Twilight Influence, on the other hand, I've only given 2 stars to. I actually don't think these cards are good enough to go into those decks even. We've seen some cards with, like, if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, and I think we've seen some with better effects than Weaver of the Cycle, and they don't see play. So by proxy, I don't think Weaver will be good enough to see play in that deck either. And then Twilight Influence is just not good enough, right? The second part of the effect, and actually a lot of the choose 1 cards from other classes, one of the effects is normally kind of garbage, honestly, but Twilight Influence's second effect is not very good, and the first effect wasn't seeing any play in Standard on the card that it's actually called. Is it called? Not Ruin. What's it called? Shadow Word Pain? Is it Pain that just deals with a 3 or lesser type minion? That card wasn't seeing any play anyway, and I don't think it'll suddenly see play now. Maybe if like there's a really big issue with the big turtle in Warrior, perhaps you'll try and do that, but if that becomes the case, they'll probably get above 3 attack anyway, so it won't matter. The final card that didn't really fit any of the list, and actually kind of disappointed me to some regards, because Sonic Drake was like the first card they showed off, or one of the first cards. It was like, oh my god, we're going to get Dragon Priest. I love Dragon Priest. And it's literally the only Dragon Priest card in the entire set. That being said, there's a bunch of dragon neutrals. Also worth noting that because there's a dragon in this card and a bunch of dragon neutrals, that means there's a lot more fuel for... oh my god, Zarimi. There's a lot more fuel for Zarimi now. That being said, Zarimi is also being nerfed. He's no longer on summoned effect, he's on played effects. That being said, though, the played effects of the dragons, the new dragons, are actually pretty good, so I think it's going to net as like basically a sidestep for that Zarimi deck. And I think because of that, it's going to be around tier 2. So I've given Selenic Drake 4 stars. I think it goes into Zarimi deck, and it's, you know, it's a pretty good card, honestly, in that deck. Then we go to Rogueland. Rogueland. Very fun. So Rogue's got two main packages. One of the package, and they probably could be run together, by the way. One of the packages copying cards from your opponent's deck and or hand, and then using Shadow Cloaked Assailant to bounce those cards back from their hand into the deck, or depending what you want to call it, just discarding it back into your deck again, or something along those lines. I don't think this is going to work. It's basically going to give you a bunch of random cards from your opponent's class, which is basically Burgle Rogue, and Burgle Rogue never works. Why? Because it's just too random. Also, it'd be unbelievably unfun if this actually was a tier 1 deck, because all that would happen in the tier 1 mirror, I imagine, is who plays Shadow Cloaked Assailant first and bounces it back a few times wins the game, right? Because you'll just play your Assailant and make your opponent discard their hand, because it's going to be similar to your hand, and it's just going to be a miserable time. Also, if you're trying to run this as a Burgle package and you do go up against a Rogue, they're not going to be cards from other classes, so you might actually not work with the Burgle package. For all those reasons, 1 star. I think this won't actually work at all. I think this is a really bad package. Also, the other package is bouncing cards back multiple times, basically to fuel Renfral, which can then lock your opponent's hand, based on the number of times you play this over the course of the game. I also think this package won't work. I think this is also an extremely fun package, but I don't think it's got enough support to actually make it work. And even if it does work, if bouncing Astalor was too slow a play, surely bouncing Renfral back is going to be even slower. I just don't see that working either. So I've given all of these 1 star as well, with the exception of Weather Deception. I'm actually giving 3 stars too, because I think it's actually a good card. We're losing a bounce card in the form of Breakdance. There's going to be a vacuum basically that needs to be filled, and I think Weather Deception is fine to fill that vacuum. The final card is Barbed Thorn. This is one of the choose 1 cards for Rogue, and this card is complete doo-doo. I kind of hate this card. It's 3 mana killer guy as long as you're willing to hit your face into that guy. That's not a bad deal, but it's a pretty brutal payoff, right, to get the effect. The downside, fairly big. And then the Death Rattle deal 2 damage to all enemies. You have to swing with the weapon 3 times, or spend 2 mana to push your button to get that effect. If you're spending 2 mana on top of the weapon, that is a 5 mana Consecration-like effect. That is not good enough. Consecration didn't see any play at 4 mana, and it's barely seeing any play at 3 mana, so Barbed Thorn, 1 star as well. I just don't think any of the Rogue cards will actually see any play. I will say one thing about the Rogue package, though. Watch this space of Mimicry, because there is actually some really weird stuff that could happen with Mimicry. I think it's going to only be in Wild, though, where some mill deck could come out. I don't think it exists in Standard right now, so there is a potential down the line, if there is some way to get multiple copies of Mimicry into your hand. Mill Rogue could be a thing, and Mimicry could actually be the key cornerstone card of that deck. Also, Harbinger, if you bounce it with Shadow Step twice on, like, you know, if you coin it on turn 1, you basically win the game. But I think it's going to be so inconsistent that, realistically, the deck won't actually see play. And then finally go to Shaman. Shaman has got an Imbue package, and I've kind of thrown in a few cards into the Imbue package. They've got Living Guardian and Aspect Embrace that clearly are the Imbue cards. They've then got Glow Root Lure, which rewards you for pushing the button, which is like the Imbue mechanic. Plucky Podling, which works with the Imbued button. The Imbued button, by the way, is evolve a minion by 1, and the 1 increases for every time you imbue over the course of the game. And then Spirits of the Forest is potentially a imbued target, and Mirithra might be intended to bring back all these big guys you've evolved into over the course of the game. I don't think this is going to work either. I think this is another one of those buttons where it's really hard to get the value. It's not like you push the button and get the value immediately. You have to play a minion and push the button at the same time, or you have to play a minion on the turn before, have it live, and then push the button on it. And even then, it's pretty slow going. A lot of the times when evolve packages work, it works in the form of some sort of AoE evolve mechanic, and this is just single target. So I think you need to really crank the button up to actually get a big enough effect to make this package work. And I don't think Shaman is going to be able to do this as easily as Druid, for example. So for those reasons, I just don't see the package working. Also, Glowroot Lure it's anti-synergistic with the button, because you don't want to evolve this thing. If you're discounting it, it's got a great stat line for the mana cost. The complete opposite of what you wanted, so I don't know why this is being printed in Shaman. Hey-ho. Aspect's Embrace also, I think, is one of the worst imbue cards out there. Restore 4 health, imbue your button for 2. It's a pretty bad deal. On the flip side, Living Garden, though, is one of the better imbue cards, so, you know. The game giveth with one hand, it taketh away with the other. Anyway, I've given 2 stars to all of these cards. I actually don't think Evolve Shaman will be a tier 3 deck even, via the imbue package. Spirits of the Wolf, I've actually given 1 additional star to. There's a world where... oh my god, what's this card? Why am I so bad with names? Nostalgia. There's a chance that Nostalgia Shaman suddenly sort of comes back into the game again. It sort of went away because it was too slow versus the aggressive decks to actually get off the win condition of turning all the board into random minions, random legendary minions. Perhaps now with the game slowing down a little bit, that deck suddenly rises back up again. And actually transformative effects like that are going to be fairly strong in the game right now, when I think there's going to be a lot of starships and stuff like that out there. Also, there is not a lot of silence in the game, or bouncing or stealing, so transform is almost an akin effect to silence, kind of, in the fact that it can just take something off the board that was really annoying. And it's AoE, so it's not affected by elusive, for example. And basically, Spirits of the Forest, I think, could be a good card that leads into this. I actually think the choose 1 effect of summon 3/2/3 wolves with Taunt is a pretty good deal for 5, and this works 5 into Wave of Nostalgia on 6, and these 2/3 wolves with Taunt maybe protects a few of the tokens that you had on the board before then. So, for that reason, I've thrown it into the 3-star department of maybe this is where Nostalgia Shaman is going to sit. Marithra actually might work with the rest of the cards as well that we're going to see, but I've given this card 4 stars. I think there's a world where Marithra goes into Terran Shaman. Terran Shaman's about to lose Fizzle, which also had been nerfed anyway, but Fizzle was still seeing some play in some of those decks regardless. And despite all the nerfs to Terran Shaman, and there's been a lot of nerfs to Terran Shaman recently, I still think Terran Shaman, at the very least, is going to be a tier 2 deck. And I think Marithra will go into that deck as like a pseudo Fizzle to try and bring back a big Starship, as well as Big Jim and, you know, the likes of those cards. Maybe the deck becomes a bit more value-orientated. Maybe you put a few bigger cards in there with Marithra. I'm not sure, but I can see a world where that goes into that deck, and I think that's going to be a pretty strong package still. So I gave that 4 stars as well. The final cards are just like, you know, a bit of randomness, kind of like a big Shaman-ish package. There's Emerald Bounty, which is a completely garbage card. Draw 2 cards, you can't play them for 2 turns, insane. Beanstalk Brute, Onara, and Typhoon. I can't get out of my head the idea that Beanstalk Brute, I've really struggled to analyze this. I can't get out of my head the thought, though, that people are going to Shudder Block it into Alakir, and that gives Alakir 15 attack. And Alakir has Wind Fury in charge, so it's lethal. I don't think that's going to actually be strong enough to actually see play, but I'm slightly concerned that people are going to do it. Also, if you ever draw the Alakir in that situation, then you're really turbo sad, because there's not a lot of good ways to put Alakir back into your deck. Actually, you might have to use Typhoon to do that, but then Typhoon is like 50-50. Who knows where it's going to go, so... for those reasons, I've actually given 3 stars to Beanstalk Brute, and actually Onara, which I think will just go into some sort of big value Shaman deck. It's kind of weird, the Onara card, because it's pretty good as a card, I think. Like, it's an okay effect, but you have to bastardize your deck in such a way that I just don't completely see where it's going to see play. Also, Shaman has got a lot of battle cries right now. Like, their main packages are battle cry packages, and Onara, you don't really want to have battle cry cards into your deck. I think there was some sort of intention that you played Beanstalk Brute into Onara to get, like, the cheated stats out quicker, but I don't think that's ever going to work. Regardless, I think there's going to be some sort of value Shaman deck, like a control Shaman list, where perhaps these cards just slot into that list and are okay. So I've given the benefit of the doubt at 3 stars. Typhoon I've only given 1 star to. Just 2 random 10 mana, like, shuffle the board into random players' decks. Not worth it for 10 mana. Shaman's actually got better control options. Actually, do they still have better control options? I'm not sure, but I feel like Shaman's got better control options beyond Typhoon that are less mana cost. Like, the Asteroid Shaman stuff is probably actually better than the Typhoon. And you've always got this risk of, like, taking one of your really good cards and shuffling it to your opponent's deck and then having a big sad time. Emerald Bounty, you might be thinking right now I'm about to give 1 star to. I really hate this card. You might even be thinking I'm going to give it 0 stars. No, 4 stars. Right, let me explain. Emerald Bounty, I think, is going to go into Asteroid Shaman. I think Asteroid Shaman is losing a big draw engine in that deck, in the form of Malagos, which drew a bunch of spells. Also, they used to run, oh my god, her name is gone, Magatha. That deck, I think, used to also run Magatha as well, right, to draw through the asteroids and the like. They don't have that anymore, so they're going to have to just draw it the good old-fashioned way. And Emerald Bounty doesn't care if these things are asteroids. They can't play them for 2 turn effect, doesn't matter anymore. It's just 2 mana, draw 2 cards, and in that deck, that could be priceless. So I think for that reason alone, and actually, I think Asteroid Shaman has a chance of being a tier 1 deck. The only thing I've actually put against that, and why I put it in the 4-star department, not the 5-star department, is that Steam Cleaner is coming back. So if that deck was ever really, really obnoxiously strong, Steam Cleaner would just get teched into every deck, and it's something like pretty hard counters that deck. Insidious was also nerfed, but I actually think the Insidious nerf is kind of minor compared to the power level of the game just been reduced in general. So yeah, that is the Shaman package for me. They're the star ratings I'm going to give. Anyway, we have one more video where I'll go through Warlock, Warrior, and the neutrals in that package, and I'll put that up tomorrow. So if you've enjoyed this one, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Everything helps me out. I'll see you next time. Bye!